So I did Goodreads. I based a lot of my data off the Goodreads report that Ben did previously that he showed us. So just a brief kind of overview. The hardest part for me was I only started Goodreads this year. So all the books I read previously, I wasn't able to input the dates into the actual app itself. So that caused a bit of issue for us. You can see that I added my own data, so fiction, non-fiction, series or standalone, and LGBTQI characters for just the books itself, and the rest was all data that was brought in. Ooh, went a little crazy. Okay. Through Goodreads itself. So I had to include my own kind of range because of that. And you can see in this diagram, this books I read during 2020. It looks like I kind of read books between 5 to 10 days. I would finish it, besides this long one here, which I dragged on because I didn't really like it. And then this one's kind of my overalls. As you can see, I won't remember the dates. I read it from a book in 2012, which is ages ago. So there is a bit of a gap here. So then this is kind of like my books read during each month. I read a lot of books during winter and not very much during summer, so I prefer to be out. Kind of publication year of books, so I've got some really old books and some books that came out this year. I reckon that these ones are more books I read in high school, to be honest. My normal page count, I usually read between 200 to 400 pages. I'm really kind of scared of those big tomes, but I'm trying to attempt to read longer books this year. Hasn't been going well. This is my ratings. I can tend to be a bit of a harsh rater like this too. It was a really bad book though. Versus kind of the average ratings in Goodreads, it tends to be a lot higher. So maybe I'm just mean. So this I mentioned before, data I researched and added. Fiction, nonfiction doesn't really bother me too much. Like I just prefer fiction over nonfiction. And all these nonfiction books, when I was in architecture and I had to read books that were nonfiction. Standalone and series, it looks like I do prefer standalone. Like this series is mainly just like Harry Potter or like the Hunger Games and things like that everyone's kind of read. So LGBTQI characters, this is really important to me because I'm bisexual myself. So the characters in the books weren't, stated their sexuality by what's being said in the book, not by implication. So obviously not very high representation, but in the graph later you can see that this year I've been reading a lot more books with LGBTQI characters. And then ethnicity is also very crudely represented. It just doesn't represent everyone's ethnicity. It's just for the sake of simplifying my data. Did I skip that graph? Maybe. There we go. Nope. Okay. Male and female. There's a lot more male and female, which I would love to improve. Yeah, this was very mortifying for me. I need to do a better job. I'm Asian myself. I would like to read. Doesn't mean I have to read more Asian books, but yeah, this was kind of really bad. Alive versus dead is not really important, but I do read a lot of authors that have passed away already, which is quite interesting for me. Nationality also was based off author's place of birth or the country that the author most identified as home. Yeah, not a lot of Korean. I'm Korean myself. Not that many Japanese either, so I would love to improve that. I do have a couple of Australian books here, so yeah. The sexuality of the author is also determined by their personal coming out. The unknown category is by people who have passed away, but there is a significant evidence that they're not straight, in other words. Also, not that great, but I'm definitely in the graph that you'll see improving. So here you can see that most of my books are by white male authors and white female authors, definitely more so white male. Male straight and male female again. Another thing I need to take aware of, male alive and male dead, and I think female dead is the case. So like back then a lot of female authors, well, females weren't really allowed to be authors in many cultures back then, so I think that's a reason why it's probably the lowest part of this graph. You can see that at least this year it's colorful. a bit more colourful than the others, but I'll definitely like to improve that over the next years. Same with non-fiction, fiction. Honestly, not that bothered with it. This is when I was doing my architecture degree. It's where all my non-fiction are. Asian, female, yeah, again, by year. It's definitely a lot more colourful this year. Female, I only read people that were books this year that were people that were alive at this time. So I don't know if that's a good thing or not. The same thing here by non-fiction and fiction, and also by male and ethnicity, non-fiction, fiction. Just the number of pages I read, definitely read a lot more. These ones aren't accurate because I wasn't able to get which year exactly I read a specific book, so it's not showing exactly how much I read.
Wrap it up.
And, yeah, just mean pages. Yeah, I'm done.
All right.
So get out of this.
Scarlett, why don't you kick this one off, because this project for me was kind of initiated by you saying that you were interested in doing books.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I was kind of excited when I saw the Goodreads at the beginning, but I actually have one question. You said that you classified something as LGBTQ based on what was in the book. How did you classify it?
So, like when I was doing my research, the main thing was, for example, in the Hunger Games, a lot of people have these kind of, I know it's a bit hard to say, but these kind of queer or non-straight characteristics. But it's never been stated that these people were like have a different sexuality other than straight. So I can't go and say, oh, these people are, for example, gay or lesbian or asexual, or whatever, based on just what the kind of book insinuated. But a lot of the books I have, they kind of verbally came out as gay, or they had partners in the book that were non-heterosexual.
Yeah, but so did you do it by whether it had the LGBTQ genre tag within the book, or if people said or some sort of word search within the book, like what?
Oh no! So for example, one of the hardest ones was in this book called Thunderhead. One of the characters didn't associate themselves with like a gender. They were like gender fluid. That's the right word. And it was actually explicitly said in the book, but there's no tag on the actual book itself saying that it is a LGBTQI. There's some books that are very like forwardly LGBTQI, but like a lot of Patrick Ness's books, which he himself is gay, have the LGBTQI tag, but a lot of them is just kind of like the one or like one or other character on the side, which is kind of hard for me to say. And when I made it, if they had one character or like that had, representation in the book, I included it in my data.
But you interpreted that, right? That was
yeah, that was my interpretation. But there wasn't like a tag on Goodreads itself that said LGBTQI. Yeah.
So you went through all of the books and manually like put yes or no for the.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Any thoughts, Phoebe?
Sorry, I'm off mute now.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear me? Okay, cool.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I think it was really good. It would have been nice, I think, to see some of the correlations between the graphs together. You had a lot of little mini graphs that showed us sort of the male-female comparison and things like that, but maybe a scatter plot where you have like the number of pages and if they're male or female might have been something that you could have gone into, sort of like correlating the data to match each other. But I think there was some really good sort of insights into it. And I found it really interesting that you went down the path of the LGBTQI, and it was sort of something that not necessarily everyone thinks of to look through in books and what the sort of sexual orientation and gender people have. So I think that was really interesting and something I enjoyed hearing about.